to follow your sentimentality. He's different now. He isn't the hollow man he once was. It's not a form of weakness, but a form of strength, and it will guide him into a pure warrior. Unable to throw away the beliefs he grew up with though, Gabimaru can't help but fall back into darkness, knowing that he's learned of weakness. Using his hand like a spear, Gabi bursts through his bandages, putting Sagiri easily within range, but once again hesitates, allowing her to notice in time and deflect the strike. The two once again slash at each other, but they both note that their own damn emotions are slowing them down. Remembering the old fart as though the dude has some kind of hold over his thoughts, Gabimaru takes things up a notch, proceeding to straight up cut her sword in half, and as she stands there in utter shock, seemingly finishes the job. Yet, somehow it's revealed that Sagiri had used her sheath to deflect the killing blow. Momentarily baffled, Gabi just tells her that resisting is useless as he knows she can't bring him down with a sheath alone. He apologizes for what he has to do, however, Sagiri again hits a nerve within him by stating that she didn't realize he was capable of feeling such sentiment given his reputation. Agreeing that he doesn't, Gabimaru blitzes Sagiri, appearing on top of her in a massive smoke and fire. Before he could kill her though, he is once again reminded of his wife's influence and stops himself from taking her out. Appearing on his shoulder, the chief's thoughts taunt Gabi, trying to get him to take out his retainer. Leaning over her, he tries to will himself to push forth and do something he's done thousands of times before, but he can't as his wife's apparition is able to destroy the emotions controlling him. Laying below the broken man, Sagiri realizes that throughout the entire time she's known him, he's worn an expression of utter pain, like he was enduring something. For her, she was able to see this, and it actually allowed her to comfort the emotions she had kept hidden. With Gabi not being able to bring himself to do what he needed to do, he begins crying, believing that with the way he is, he won't be able to survive on the island or ever see his wife again. Sagiri though realizes that this isn't weakness. What he has is love for his wife, which shows for a fact that he can feel emotions. Still lying there, she promises him that if he faces his emotions while reclaiming his life, then she will support him throughout the journey. Finally, Sagiri tells Gabimaru to show her what he's capable of, as even though their inherent relationship hasn't changed, he is no longer the same man he once was. So I absolutely love these next two characters that get introduced throughout this part of the story here. Complete polar opposites, but damn, they're both so cool in their own kind of way. So in the past, the hulking giant Gentetsu went by the name Blade Dragon 8 Provinces Unparalleled. After arriving in a certain province, a daimyo who shared the similar title offered him work and food, so he decided to take him up on the offer. After a couple of drinks though, the daimyo insisted that even with his nickname, he doubts he could ever take down an actual dragon. Utterly insulted with the idea that he couldn't take down a dragon, Gentetsu destroyed the dragon statue atop the entranceway to the daimyo's residence, along with the whole gate. Obviously, as you may have suspected, this resulted in him being kicked out of his own clan and sentenced to death, hence how the man ended up on the mission here to the island. Having revealed his past to his retainer, who's the rank 9 Yamada Asaemon Fuchi, Gentetsu tells him that once he gets his pardon and walks free, he will return to cut down that silly old daimyo's mansion. Fuchi, who's just standing there, utterly fails to comprehend how he even came to that being a good conclusion. Gentetsu jokingly mocks the tiny retainer and makes a few negative comments about the Yamada clan. Peeved, Fuchi draws out his sword and tells him to not make fun of the clan, causing Gentetsu to back away from the blade, feeling a deadly bloodlust coming from the midget. Not escalating the argument, the big man just tells him to not get in his way before freeing himself from his bindings. He then explains his part of eliminating the other competition around, criminals wise, so he can take the extra time with finding the elixir in safety. Fuchi takes note that only a few criminals will survive the trials on the island, and if the shogun becomes impatient because of that, he will call upon a stronger and more venomous batch of warriors to be dispatched in their stead. By the way, this is a big thing in the story here, and I hope some people pick up on it throughout. Just let me know down in the comments if you do and whatnot. But the symbolism here is actually taken from real life. Back in early Japan, they used to put venomous insects in a pot and then let them battle to the death, which is absolutely crazy. Then they would take the venom that remained and use that to curse someone. Another big mangaka to go out of his way and actually do this in their series, if you've noticed, is Giga with some of the recent stuff in the manga, like chapter 215 that this is referenced to. But yeah, anyway, continuing. Either way, having moved forward together, the two then stumble upon some ancient man-made statues. Not paying attention to his surroundings, Gentetsu is stung on the hand by a random looking butterfly that had a human face on it. Stunned, he quickly remembered what happened to the guard that had returned from the island, and without a second thought, cut off his hand, confusing taking the retainer with him. Looking at his hand though, it's shown that in a matter of moments after having landed on the ground, it started morphing into a bunch of flowers. Suddenly, from within the trees around them, butterflies start bursting out, causing Gentetsu-sai to get excited as he prepares to defend himself against the random creatures. However, appearing from behind them once more, a comically large titan-like creature then starts walking in their direction. Meanwhile, Gabimaru and Sagiri are also approached by the same weird-looking creatures. With them confused over what they're seeing, Gabimaru steps forth, telling Sagiri to stay back. Looking at it, he wonders what in the world it could possibly be. Why a fish? It doesn't even look like it's supposed to be real. Plus, it's got these random prayer beads as if it's subject to some sort of religion. With his instincts screaming danger, Gabimaru watches as the beast tries to attack him. Easily, he's able to dodge the amalgamation of hands before jumping up and kicking the monster. However, the monster was actually able to block the blow. Then, having grabbed the ninja's leg, proceeds to toss him into the ground, causing Gabi to jump back and rethink his attacking strategy. Remembering his ironclad ninja law number 5, to avoid an unfamiliar enemy, he thinks about fleeing the area with Sagiri. Yet, our boy is taken by surprise as a rope-like extension from the monster grabs and tosses him through the nearby foliage. Wounded from the blow, he tells Sagiri that they just need to run for now, but as they go to leave, it's shown that a plethora of these random monsters with prayer beads and vestments have surrounded them. Seeing no way out, Gabimaru clears his head of all other distractions and goes utter demon mode. Jumping into the sky, he easily takes out their monsters with a punch before igniting them with Ninpo aesthetic blaze. Sagiri, who's watching in horror behind him, remembers how Gabimaru explained that in his clan they go through all kinds of bizarre training, and through that they learn abilities akin to breathing fire or becoming one with the sea. Gabimaru, having sparked a light from the use of his technique, knows that in order to survive this hellish island and get a pardon, he has to kill anything that gets in his way. Watching Gabimaru fight off the random creatures, Sagiri thought that she was prepared to take on the unknown. But now, with everything going on around her, she starts to wonder if perhaps this isn't the Pure Land, but instead... Then, before she's even able to think any longer, a large, Buddha-like monster confronts her from behind. Gabimaru, who's fading in and out of some kind of like visual experience, notices that Sagiri is in danger, but instead of turning to help her, focuses on taking out the large creature in front of him himself. However, without even realizing it, Gabi had managed to actually attack her creature, saving Sagiri in the process. As Gabi sits there, confused, holding her, she thanks him for saving her life, but then again, out of nowhere, he has his head ripped up by one of those creature's tentacles. Randomly, in the split second before the monster squeezed down, someone had managed to sever its hold on Gabimaru. Turning around, he notices that 3 newcomers had arrived and saved them from the surrounding creatures. Yuzuriha, who's another ninja like Gabi, walks up and makes her introduction. While Sagiri thinks it's odd that a pair of retainers are escorting her, Gabimaru thanks them for intervening, but asks why. Why would they go out of their way to help someone when they're under no obligation to do so? Yuzuriha just tries straight up seducing him to get around the question and into teaming up. However, Gabimaru pins her down, explaining that that method won't work on him. Be like Gabi, guys. Don't be like Sneeko. Don't be a cuckboy like Sneeko. Anyway, Yuzuriha was really trying to team up with them, but before they could continue as a group, Sagiri asks why would 2 people escort her. Rank 8 Yamada Asaemon Genji explains that he was originally in charge of Moro, yet Moro was quickly deceived by Yuzuriha and taken out. After realizing what she'd done, Genji proudly determined that she could not be left alone with just a single executioner and decided to watch over her with the other dude. Yuzuriha explains that before running into Gabimaru, they were also surrounded by bugs. She knows that this island isn't exactly the safest place, and because of that, knows finding the elixir and escaping is key. Yet, if she was to run in without a plan or by herself, she'd probably be killed and it would all be for nothing. So due to the predicament she found herself in, the strategy of playing it safe by teaming up to find the elixir is by far the smartest. After thinking Gabimaru accepted her into the group, Yuzuriha tried giving him a hug, but Gabi instantly pinned her down again, telling her that he wasn't in agreement since he didn't trust them in the slightest. Looking at him, Yuzuriha breaks the ninja's hold, pulling him in close and telling him that they didn't have to trust each other and can betray each other whenever they'd like, as after all, the elixir is just with a single pardon. If they team up though, she'll provide them with information regarding the human-faced butterflies, explaining that they swarm around the monsters and have scales and emit poison that cause hallucinations, but are still a mystery overall. Curious on how she figured out all this to start with, Gabi asks how she came to this conclusion. Funnily enough, like remember Moro from just before, well, Yuzuriha had got hella friendly with him like she tried to with Gabi, then tied him up to a tree, then, left him prey to certain bugs to check their effects. From this, she was able to learn that the centipedes by far have the worst effects, but the majority of their bugs won't really attack you unless you provoke them. Yamada Asaemon Center, who's like originally Yuzuriha's executioner, finally speaks up and lets them know that all of the monsters he's seen have qualities associated with Buddhism and Tao. Those two religions alone have fundamentally different core structures, so he finds it weirdly unsettling that they're blended together in some sort of dark nature. From just this fact alone, he believes that this island's true nature is definitely not pure. Sagiri agrees, like even though these monsters appear as godly beings, the feeling her blade gives her solidifies the idea that they are simply living creatures. To Yuzuriha, this just cements that this is a priority they communicate and gather more info, but Gabimaru, wondering what's motivating her to this extent, asks why. According to her, this is all for her little sister. She suffers from an incurable disease, and due to her situation in life, they couldn't even afford basic medicine. In an attempt to earn money, she turned ninja and took part in hellish training inside of the Kai clan. Randomly, one day the boss turned on her, and that's how she ended up here. Still, Gabimaru honestly doesn't believe her. Finally revealing what seems to be the truth though, she says that she doesn't even have a story. Getting to live and return home is more than enough for her. Wanting to know one more thing, Gabby inquires as to what exactly she did to her executioner. Like last time, she insists that he was just used as a vessel to perform research experiments on, before snidely asking if he really cares that much about the lives of others. Knowing that she contains information about the island, Gabimaru agrees to help her with fighting, but other than that, they're not cooperating. As the others then bicker about what information to share, Sagiri looks back on how far she's come since arriving on the island, which in her eyes is pretty much nowhere. She knows that she was overwhelmed by the monsters and the entire situation itself has just caused her to feel flustered. Disappointed in herself for how powerless she currently is, Sagiri drops to the floor, fainting from the effects of the previous battle. Going back in time again slightly, I guess, we're introduced to Toma, who'd managed to earn his license as a part of the Asaemon executioners after only a month of training. The only thing remaining for him to do was the execution itself. Funnily enough, it's shown that the person he'd chosen was his own brother. In a turn of events that the clan isn't even privy to yet, Toma had purposefully infiltrated them so that the two would later be able to escape together. Obviously, the way they ended up escaping or trying to was taking part as a retainer and criminal on the trip to Paradise Island. Now on the island, it's shown that the two are able to make landfall, but like everyone else, have been surrounded by a plethora of random wildlife and religious figures. Watching Chobe rush forward to protect him, Toma thinks back on how, even when they were little and had lost their mother to illness, even after their father betrayed the clan and was sentenced, even when the bandits attacked them without a second thought, Chobe always figured things out and adapted to every situation. He learnt early on that the law of this land isn't the strong always win, but rather a survival of those who manage to adapt best to their situations and surroundings affecting them. By the way, you'll learn all about how the story teaches us that being strong and weak are both valuable to someone's personality. It's a much deeper story than I really thought when I got into it. I came in under the precedent that it was a darker shonen and part of the dark trio with CSM and JJK, and it went crazy with some of its battles, but I had no idea that some of the things that it tries to teach us as its readers are truly good morals to live by. Like straight up, even with just Gabby being faithful to his wife even though he is only 16, and not that pervy weirdness that other series tend to have, it's that faithful love, it's normal. Anyway, let's get past me being that weird, soppy, normal Diavolo in a different timeline. I don't know where this Diavolo came from, but anyway, moving forth. Having taken out a bunch of the monsters, the duo notice even more approaching and decide to flee the area rather than take them on. As they try to escape, Toma's hair is caught by one of the monsters and while freaking out, screams for his brother's help. However, Chobe continues to run off. Left with no other option than to defend for himself, Toma strikes at the larger monster trying to take it down. Blowing through the monster though, it's shown that Chobe had actually just gapped it to grab a large axe from one of the previously defeated creatures. Chobe is then struck by another monster, taking him completely by surprise, and while looking at the group beginning to surround them, it hears them all tell them that killing is a sin. Standing there listening to all of the voices echo around them, Toma begins to freak out in a similar way to Sagiri earlier. Chobe, on the other hand though, like man's on that demon mode spec, becomes enraged by their speaking of sin and tells them to shut up. He screams as he destroys the surrounding monsters that all of them are just slaves, silly puppets stuck to a regimented code of law. Unlike them, he is his own master, his own god. Standing there, looking at her brother, Toma admires Chobe's ability to adapt. His constant, unyielding sense of self is what defines him. So when it comes to the overall plan with the brothers right here, it's changed from just getting this pardon and escaping together. Now, Chobe states that he will kill all of these monsters and criminals on the island before downing the elixir of life themselves. Back with the main squad now, Sagiri awakens terrified after having a nightmare that involved her father looking down on her. Genji, who's nearby looking after her while the others were working, brings her up to date on how they've actually taken shelter in a tree hollow and she had fainted because of the toxic powder coming off the butterflies. As Sagiri then leaves the hollow, she finds Gabby chilling outside with Senta making a meal for the group. Outside, he brings her up to date, explaining that while looking for ingredients for their meal, he took the opportunity to check the island out a bit more. Pretty much, he was able to deduce that there isn't anything resembling the elixir around the area they find themselves in. Instead, most of the fauna around are like a jumble of different plants that you could find on the mainland, with the exception of a few random flowers. Genji suggests that the plants might be from the Ryukyu Islands, but Gabby explains what really stood out was how all of the samurai were in bloom. Remember like the initial squad that rolled up to the island, with only one returning? Well yes, sadly they'd all fallen prey to this island, as you could probably imagine. By the way, for like anyone confused with the Ryukyu Islands again, in Jigo Karaku's story, the islands are probably like the closest piece of Japanese land to this so-called Paradise Island. Senta, like the old school weeb legend himself, then gives his input and tells them how the statues all scattered about the place seem to be either Buddhist or Taoist in design, yet that isn't actually what intrigues him. More, he questions if the technology to create such things even exists on this island, or perhaps their creator lives elsewhere before he brought them here. Sagiri believes that it's just unfeasible for anyone to live on the island to start with, since the creatures make it too dangerous for any human to exist. She then explains how she detected human traits from the monsters when she was cutting them, but detected no signs of organs or reproductive capabilities. The monsters' forms are utterly bizarre, with them possessing some form of humanoid structure, but with bugs and other creatures right in atop them. Senta interrupts and explains it all a little bit better. We know that they're religious in nature, but the details aren't exactly right, as if they're poorly thought out deities. This island and the monsters as a whole, it's all too artificial to be the creations of divine creatures. It's as if the group had been tossed into an ill-conceived mandala, an unfamiliar space with nothing tying them back to reality. Growing a crazed expression, Gabimaru becomes manic after hearing that creatures without organs exist. To him, that sounds like some form of immortality, so if he can find that source, then he can return home. Taking Gabimaru's advice, Senta says that they should do more research on the monsters before they travel any deeper and put their lives in more danger. As the sun begins to start setting, Genji confronts Sagiri and demands that she return home on the ship. He knows that this isn't a place for her, and due to her criminal passing away, can take her stead. In his eyes, anyone who decides to stay on the island will only face death, but Sagiri denies his attempts to send her home, instead wishing to complete her duty. Genji questions her skill though and points out that the blade she now has is just some random one she picked up along the way. To anyone in the Yamada clan, they know that the katana is a warrior's spirit, and with Sagiri having lost hers, it's as if she's already lost what made her a Yamada to begin with. He doesn't deny that she is truly skilled with a blade, but this island is different. Some weird skill is needed to win battles here, and she's clearly being held back by one majorly defining factor, her gender. Just feel some weirdo masculinity vibe coming off Genji right now. He seemed really cool up until a moment ago. It kind of sucked. I liked his bushy ass eyebrows. Either way, meanwhile, the goats themselves, rank 10 Yamada Osaemon Tenza and his criminal Narugai are found on a small rowing boat attempting to escape the island. Narugai brings up that even if they do manage to leave, they'll both die as they've returned without the elixir. Thinking that he can get his way through any scenario, Tenza reassures him that he'll try and convince the higher-ups somehow once they aboard the shogunate ship. Apparently, there is a large vessel that is meant to be anchored nearby for 3 days, allowing them to complete the mission and then return home on that vessel. After pointing out something he thought was the boat, they're both disheartened to only find the remains of their ship strewn in between long ago destroyed ships half submerged in front of them. Narugai, who spotted something out of the corner of his eye, tells Tenza to stop drawing his sword, but it's too late as a massive tentacle appears behind and swipes at the two. Having noticed in time, Narugai was able to grab his boy and dodge the attack, telling him that most creatures are sensitive to shiny things, so they should just look for an escape route. Unable to find a boat to escape on, the two become surrounded, causing Narugai to think back on the time he accidentally led soldiers to his village. Back then, he was one of the mountain folk, someone who didn't pledge loyalty to the shogunate, but instead lived traditionally. With Japan having certain rules in this time period that meant people couldn't live this way, they were instead considered rebels against the regime. Sadly, they used Narugai to lure out the locations of his other family and clan members who subsequently died from this. Once imprisoned himself, Narugai had met Tenza, who out of the generosity of his heart offered him a mission to search for the elixir as a way to escape imprisonment. Confused on what he should do, Narugo wonders if he should die for the sin he committed or live on and continue his village's bloodline as the last of its name. Obviously, as we find them stumbling into Kisho's body, which had become blooming with flowers, he'd chosen the latter and decided to take his chances with Tenzo on the island. As a massive tentacle destroys even more of their surroundings, Narugo looks upon Kisho's body and sees a vision of his grandfather's last moments, causing him to become frightened and drop to his knees. Tenzo asks